Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/INTB and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title free and start listening. It's easy. Go to audibletrial.com/INTB.
Honestly, they're not that bad.
Welcome to a new episode of It's Not That Bad Podcast. I'm Fern here with Dom.
Hello.
So here we are. It's during quarantine, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But good news is, as everyone should know by now, Season 3 of Westworld has finally wrapped.
Yeah.
First, I want to talk about how split I feel a lot of people have been with Westworld.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
And we'll get into this later, spoiler alert. But it's so weird to me because Westworld has constantly set itself up to be a show that has always meant to be like, well, there's always something going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
They never once really hard ended a season.
No.
Mainly because they said, yeah, we want to do at least, well, we said before, but first he was like, we're going to do 7 seasons. Oh, yeah, and maybe a movie. And then that quickly turned and be like, oh, we could probably do like 4 or 5 seasons. You know, whatever happened. But I still have to do a movie. Now it's looking more of like, yeah, no, I think it's going to be a solid 4 seasons.
Which that, to me, like, sucks. Like, I honestly would love more. And as soon as this ended, that's what I wanted. I was disappointed that there was 8 episodes instead of 10.
Well, okay, so the one thing that Westworld has done really well, and some people think that it's a problem, but it's not, because they've been doing this since it started, is they always played with this idea of like what's really going on.
Yeah.
Obviously, the first season we had the multiple timelines, and that tripped everybody out, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, but obviously as those multiple timelines are going on, the greater story of like what is life, what is consciousness, you know, what is real, whatever. That was the main story. The side thing was like you trying to figure out what was going on, right? Season 2 did the same thing, but they actually had the consciousness thing up forward. And then this season, what they did is they completely took us out of that Westworld theme park, whatever experience.
Yeah.
And it's like, nope, we're in the real world, right? And this is everything that's going on. And I do still feel like they probably did play with timelines. And
I think so too.
Whatever too. And that's what some people have a problem too. Like, well, they didn't really answer anything. But it's like, they're not supposed to tell you like, if the show was meant to tell you everything, then we would have got 1 season.
Yeah. And that 1 season would have told you, oh, they would have held your hand and walked you through the whole story. It would have been Bernard sitting there telling you every single little thing that's going on.
Exactly, because they're always taking something and I guess like planning it now, right? So then the next season or whatever, it blossoms into like, oh, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Or, oh, yeah, duh. But also, what I think is funny is that because they're so well known for doing stuff like that, they have these things that you think are going to be super like complex. And you're like, yeah, obviously we're going to get into this and this. And then right now you get it and it's like, no, it's just a thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, but what? We didn't get into it. They're not saying they're never going to get into it. They're not even saying that, that matters right now. It's just like the way they set up these things. It's like you're constantly trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And the one thing I loved about this season really was bringing in this idea that the real world isn't that much different than the park. And hopefully they do something like what devs did and like digital consciousness and like what's real, what isn't. You know, we do see that Ford had it. Well, is he in there? I don't know where he is actually, to be honest.
I don't remember.
I can't. But either way, Ford did upload his consciousness, you know, try to the digital whatever. And then Bernard goes in at the end of, you know, spoiler, obviously we're talking about it, but he goes into that
the forge, right? That's what it's called.
The forge. So the element's still there. Plus we know about the mirror world, quote unquote, that Rehoboam was doing or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's still that there. But the cool thing is the like hard hit, like on the nose thing was like, yeah, you guys go through all this stuff just like we did. And it's funny too, because you come to the end and the whole season, you're like, yeah, Dolores is she's a big bad. She's the big bad. She's definitely the big bad. Or I think the one guy calls her like Dolores Prime. But like, she's the big bad. But then you get to the end and she's like, well, yeah, you know, you're still bad, but like there's good in the world. Like that's, you know,
well, see,
that's something you can't take away.
Because everyone was always like, well, what's her big plan, right? What's her big? I don't understand what her plan is. It's like she's been telling, like, I feel like this idea of her wanting to save humanity was kind of part of what we've seen the last two. Yeah, she's been killing people, but like ultimately, I think that's what it was leading to, was like, we can't destroy humanity. We have to save it, right? I don't understand where people like. I guess I could see it where it's like, oh, she's going around doing all these shady things. Because
it's divisive.
Yeah, but if you're paying it,
she did technically kind of say, in a vague way, like, we have to tear this all down, and you're supposed to take it. Yeah, but you're supposed to take it as humanity, because the first. That's what I say is like it's so funny because the first season you see her gain consciousness.
Yeah.
And you see how horrible people are. The second season she's really starting to come into her own, but still humans are horrible. And even this season, like, they do the cutbacks with Caleb and stuff, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
It's real cool because they tie that into that here's this thing that she saw. And maybe this all ties into free will being an actual thing, right? Where chance does exist in this world, because you could say that, oh well, in that one scene where Caleb is practicing at the park and they save Dolores, and before those guys try to rape all of them, he steps in the good guy, right?
Yeah.
You could say that. Just like what Devs does, like, oh, that was always meant to be, right?
Yeah.
But then you could also go on the other side of the coin and say, well, this is like the point where Dolores really started to come alive, or like started regaining her consciousness.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing I really love about Westworld is there's so many layers that you can really dive deep into, that you can say one thing or another, and I think that the showrunners have kind of stated like, yeah, that could be a thing. We don't know.
Yeah, but see that it's like, I feel like these people are also not like paying attention to what they're being presented, right? Like, I can understand like the bait and switch of like, oh, like, I didn't know that this was happening at a different time. Like, that to me, okay, that's understandable. But when you're actively like, well, what's going on? I don't understand like what the big plan is. It's like, are you not paying attention to what's going on?
That's what was really cool, is that it's not necessarily about like humans versus robots or whatever, although this next season looks like it is.
Yeah.
It's really about like life and control and like real. And,
what is free will? Like, what is consciousness? What is free will? Because
her in this season going against the quote unquote humans, it wasn't about that. It was about the control. It was about the fact that everyone in the quote unquote real world is still being controlled like the host. Mm-hmm. And what did she do? She wanted to free all the hosts.
Yeah.
And the reason and how she frees the host is she has to get rid of Delos and everyone in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So on the surface, yeah, it looks like she just wants to kill all the humans. And I don't know, maybe at one point that's exactly what it was, but I think she started to realize that it's not about this. There's a beauty in this world that you can't see if someone's always controlling it. And when you get to the real world, you think that someone controlling it is like, oh, these people, it's Serac, but it's not. It's Rehoboam. It's just giant AI doing exactly the opposite of what the park was doing.
Yeah.
The AI was controlling the humans as opposed to the humans controlling like the robots. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where she wanted to free everyone. And they talk about it before, how like, look at what happened with the park and all the chaos and stuff in order for them to be free. Right now, all we really see is like a handful of hosts be free.
Yeah.
And obviously we're leading into more hosts being, coming into like the quote unquote real world. But there's something that they always stuck with, was like this beauty, you know what I mean? Just this like realness to it. And that was really cool, especially this season when Dolores Prime dies. It's like, oh no, she's always saw this beauty. And you go back to the old seasons, and that was part of it too. Was like, it was part of her character without the Wyatt character, who always saw the good in people and always saw, like the beauty in the world. Like her, her painting and her wanting to go and all this stuff, right? She's always been that character. It was the Wyatt part of her that made her more ruthless.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the part that, pushed her to do all this. But really, Arnold was setting her up to become, conscious. But the Wyatt part came afterwards. You know what I mean? So the Dolores that we see at the end has always been there. She just kind of, she's been through some stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I understand how some people get frustrated with this stuff. And like I said, we'll get into it later on in the episode. But if it's one of those things where we saw with Prometheus, it's like, if you just pay attention, it's all there.
Yeah. Because that's how it always is. Like, they're not trying to tell you the answer to, because we don't have an answer to these questions. Like consciousness, like how do you discern consciousness? How do you discern free will? Right? Like in Westworld, it's like you can't answer those questions because we don't even know the answer to like the base questions. So it's like, I don't know. You're right. It's like these open-ended questions that people want a full answer to, but it's like that's not the question that needs to be answered. It's this other question we're asking.
And that's what's really cool about the show, is that they're not afraid to go that hard sci-fi route. Like the end of season 2, you see William come back into, you're assuming, the park, I guess. And you see his daughter coming in.
Yeah.
And they're going through that whole thing that he did with his father-in-law. So you're thinking like, oh, okay, what does this mean? Well, the creator said like that's the furthest in the future that we've ever seen in the entire Westworld series so far, right? And it begs to ask the question, well, what does that mean for the future? Because in this season, we see a thing of what could happen if Caleb does exactly what he does, right? It's like killing this many years. And I think the end was like population extinction was like 50 to something years, and like I think it was like something whatever was like 100 and something years in, right? So it's like it's one of those things where it's like it could be a little thing, it could be a big thing, that could be the ending to the whole series that we don't even know. But so does that mean that the host William that we see at the end of this season, is he not fully awake or in control like a Dolores or a Maeve? Is that a plot point for next season? Are they going to be conscious? Like, because that was one thing that we know exactly what brings consciousness into the host is when they start to hear themselves. Not what was it, like what's his name was hearing Ford, but really he realized like no, it's his own voice. Same thing with Dolores. You know, she would hear her own voice.
Yeah.
So that which is crazy because, you know, some people don't have that voice, which is like real life people. They're like, I don't hear a voice when I think of, you know, read this, whatever. Yeah.
Weird. I didn't know.
So does that mean that those hosts that she's making, are they hosts that she can control? Or are they hosts that she's trying to breed into consciousness? Is there like a hard, fast, easy way to gain consciousness? Is that going to be something? Because like I said, with the William thing, is that going to be another thing where it keeps failing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much there.
Yeah.
What the little they show you, and it's like that's kind of the whole thing. Like that's what you're supposed to get from the show. This isn't a Law and Order show where they have all these facts for you and you're supposed to be like, oh yeah, I know exactly what happens at the end. Or like, no, you don't. You're a stupid idiot. This is real what happened, because the person ends up like, what was it? They always like confess or something like at the end, and they're like, well, she had it coming because she was making fun of me or whatever. It's none of that shit. The one thing that with sci-fi does, and especially what Westworld does, is that it leaves so much open-ended questions and like thoughts.
Yeah.
And some of this stuff may never come true. Some of the stuff may not even like matter in the end, but still, like, just the thought of it. Like we said with Prometheus, the one thing I think what really drew us into that movie, obviously the fact that it was entertaining, and you guys are stupid if you don't believe that, but it had so many questions for a greater universe and what could be. And that's where we were at. We were like, man, what if this? What if this? Oh, maybe they could show this. Oh, what if they had, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where we left off, instead of everyone else would like, yeah, but like you couldn't run in a straight line because that's stupid. And that's where I feel like a lot of people are with Westworld right now.
How come there weren't more xenomorphs?
And I think that those are the same people that watched Game of Thrones and got upset because, well, they didn't show this or talk about this. They just got to here. And it's like, yeah, but isn't that what you guys want? From what you guys complain about all the time, they got through everything they're supposed to get, and you got your happy ending.
I think fans these days, I don't know what they want, but they don't want the endings that they get.
What I think it is I think that they were bred into being fickle. Yeah. I think that in this day and age where some things never have to die, they feel like they're old more. Mm-hmm. We get it with Star Wars. We get it when X TV show comes back, and now we really get to see what happens.
Yeah, and then it gives you something. It gives you more of what you wanted, but they complain because they're like,
that's not what I
want. But it's like, no, you wanted more, and that's what they're doing.
Man, I don't know. It's just, it's a lot to unpack, but really, if you haven't seen Westworld, watch it.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you right now, season 1 is still some of the best TV I've ever seen ever. And now that you can binge watch it, go from season 1, 2, and 3 and see if you really like it or not. Most likely season 4 is going to be the last one. I don't know. They could do something different. Honestly, one thing I love about, like I said, one thing I love about Westworld is they could go do a season 4 and you think it's going to be the end. And then maybe season 5 is like 500 years in the future. And it's like, what the fuck? But for what it is and what we got, like, I loved it. I wish it was 10 episodes, but the 8 episodes we got was awesome. I really don't have any problems with this season. Maybe you do. Let us know what you thought about it. But definitely this season was an A+ in my book.
Oh, yeah.
I loved it, and I can't wait for season 4 in like 2.5 years, maybe.
I think it's probably gonna be like 3.
Probably 3. So go watch it.
This is the fucking news.
Since we live in the darkest timeline, that means we might not be getting a new Black Mirror season anytime soon. In a recent interview, the creator of the popular dystopian anthology series, Charlie Brooker, was unsure if a new season will happen. He said, I've been busy doing things. I don't know what I can say about what I'm doing and not doing. At the moment, I don't know what stomach there is for stories about societies falling apart, so I'm not working away on those. I'm sort of keen to revisit my comic skill set, so I've been writing scripts aimed at making myself laugh. The Emmy-winning series has often showcased nightmarish scenarios for its characters that feel all too real given the current world pandemic. Last we had new Black Mirror episodes, June 2019. Black Mirror also introduced a new storytelling format on Netflix when it released Bandersnatch in 2018, an interactive Black Mirror film. Brooker's twisted imagination often feels all too real. The science fiction show captures the plights of modern technology in troubling ways. It's brought audiences back again and again, but now with the world in the state that it's in, it seems Brooker wants to go back to his comedic skill set, which is upsetting because like Black Mirror is one of the better things on Netflix. I get why like you wouldn't like why you would be like, well, it's right now is like such a terrible time to like be like feel even worse about things, but it's like I don't know, like I mean, like I'd like to see more Black Mirror just because I love the idea. I don't know. I feel like it's. I mean, I like to see him do more.
It does
like,
feel weird though sometimes when you see a headline and it's like it just reminds you of a Black Mirror episode, and you're like,
yeah,
we can't be getting there, right? But that is the whole thing of Black Mirror. It's the whole idea of Black Mirror is like, oh, you're staring in the face of technology type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So when what was it, China, I think, that rolled out that plan of like earning points for socially whatever, it's like, what the fuck? Like, did they just watch that and they're like, that's a good idea? But I don't know. I think that it's entertaining to me because you don't want to be there. So it does make sense why you wouldn't want to make something like that when it's like, yeah, but we are there.
Yeah, who'd want to live in a timeline where like some crass, vulgar television star just like bullies his way through a primary and wins the presidency? Oh wait.
Oh, that's not. I thought that was a funny TV show.
Oh, I thought that was a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, fuck.
Yikes.
I mean, you could see why.
Yeah.
So it does. Honestly, it does suck, and it makes me hate. I'm here. Sorry to say this, but it makes me hate Donald J. Trump a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you fucking dickhead, you started this. But I mean, at least he's not giving up on creating.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't wait to see like what he.
And I doubt that this is him saying, "Oh, Black Mirror is dead." Like, you know, it's not like
it did have a break, anyways, right? From the second season to the third.
Yeah, it's been, they've had like longer breaks now.
Yeah.
So it's not unheard of, and it's not like it's like some, you know, restaurant in this economy where they're like, we're never gonna open again. So it does suck, but at the same point, it's like, yeah, I mean, if we have to wait another like 2 or 3 years, that would be kind of shitty. But at the same point, I mean, just think about it, you know, randomly in a couple of years, it's like, oh, Black Mirror's back.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be back on like track to happier days.
Yeah. Trying to find a silver lining in all this.
Yeah.
Maybe this quarantine thing and having everyone shut down, maybe this will help set a precedent for like not putting shows in boxes to where if we have to wait, as shitty as it sounds, but if we have to wait another 3 years for like a Mandalorian TV show or a Mandalorian season, that it'd be fine because it's like, it's okay. We know it's going to come.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And we know we're going to like it anyway.
Yeah. So it's shitty, but at least it's like not on the chopping block, you know?
Walt Disney Studios gave Star Wars fans a May the 4th surprise by announcing that Thor Ragnarok and The Mandalorian director Taika Waititi will co-write and direct a new untitled Star Wars movie, which had already been said before, but Waititi will co-write the movie, which was announced as a standalone film that will likely have no connection to the Skywalker saga. With Christy Wilson Cairns co-wrote 1917 with Sam Mendes. Star Wars fans praised Waititi's contribution to Season 1 of The Mandalorian, for which he voiced the killer-turned-nanny droid IG-11 and also directed the final episode. But he did not contribute any writing to the series in the first season. Any production on his Star Wars film will likely come after he completes his work writing and directing Thor: Love and Thunder for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Which, I mean, this is always like gonna come, right? And one thing I hate is that people have been posting, oh, Taika Waititi's doing it, so he'll finally make a good Star Wars movie. Oh, can he redeem Star Wars? Oh, God, it's upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much thought this was going to happen. And when things started going on, it's like, yeah, especially with like Disney and Marvel and everything kind of, being all together. Like we said, with Feige supposedly supposed to help out with some Star Wars shit and, vice versa. So it's like this crossbreeding shit that they're doing makes sense. And the fact that he already was tied to Star Wars now makes sense. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I honestly don't care what he does.
Yeah.
Because I'm obviously going to watch it and most likely I'm going to like it. And I honestly don't think he's going to fail at it because we saw, and I don't mean this in like, oh, he revived Thor, but we saw him take on something as big as the Thor Ragnarok, right? And coming on the other side, like he was this golden director. So I'm pretty sure that he's gonna succeed pretty hard. But until then, I mean, we're just gonna have to wait.
Yeah. So Trolls World Tour was released on demand instead of in theaters due to the coronavirus. Now, a new report is suggesting the stars, including Anna Kendrick and Justin Timberlake, were not told beforehand that this would be happening. The stars were allegedly not told that the movie would be made available for rental at $20, and sources are telling different news outlets that this is not the sort of surprise such people usually like, because compensation for big stars in animated films is largely tied to box office bonuses. Trolls World Tour is said to have made around $100 million so far, even though some say the film is still millions in the red and may never recoup money. Justin and Anna's reps wanted them to be paid their fair share and reportedly 7 figures for the box office totals.
There were so many articles talking about like, this is a win for the movie industry and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And it's like, hey, you realize this is a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that movie theaters aren't to blame or anything, but look at this. This may not seem like a big deal, but when you're talking about a movie, like let's just say it wasn't, what is it? Trolls,
yeah.
Let's just say it wasn't Trolls. Let's say this was some smaller budget horror film with Justin Timberlake and what's her name?
Anna
Kendrick. Right? Let's say it was that, and an all-in budget was like $20 million, right?
Yeah.
And it made that much money. Just imagine like what we would hear about there. Oh, so movie companies trying to rip off their 2 biggest stars? It's like, yeah, but you were just praising them the other week. Mm-hmm. What happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And what's more ridiculous, I think, is that, like we stated in that same that news portion, that the studio actually gets what did I say, 80% instead of 50-50. So they're actually, yes, they're still in the red. Like I got this from said, right? Like, yeah, they're in the red, but not really, because they actually, it's $100 million compared to, what I think it was like about $100 million in the theaters for the first one.
It was like 130 or something.
Oh yeah. But I think now it's actually the equivalent too, right? Because of the way that the percentages on video on demand works versus in theaters. So the studio actually is making more money this way. So and then they're saying, well, yeah, you know what? It only made 100 million. It's like, yeah, but you're receiving more money. So like, shouldn't that make up for giving us our bonuses? Well, it didn't beat the first one. Look at the box office of the first one. And it's like, and see, I don't think people are looking at it like that, where they're like, it's like it's like the way inflation works. It's like you're not looking at the numbers, the real numbers. The real numbers are the studios are making more money now than they did. They're not making more. They're making equivalent to by releasing on the video on demand, and then they're using this as a way to say, well, it didn't beat the box office for the first one, so we can't give you a bonus.
Yeah. I think it's something like you need to put in a graph so people could be like, oh, yeah, colors. I could tell the colors are different.
Look at the way that color's a little bit above that color. I get it now.
Oh, yeah. And that was something that I was going to tell you too. It's like, it's so crazy how much people, because I mean, like I said, we're so good at like busting the news. But after we did our episode, not that long, maybe a couple days after, everyone started to report it, right? Mm. And almost every single article was praising the company, Universal was praising Universal about like, oh, they're changing the game. Oh, now it's, the ball's in their court. Oh, like, oh, this is gonna be blah blah blah, whatever. Just like, I forgot. It was someone like more prestigious, but it was some online article that was like, with so many transactions happening during the quarantine, so this mean the U.S. should move to all electric currency, and it's like, because we had a couple of weeks where we can't physically go out, like, you know what I mean?
I mean,
like, that's what I mean is like they're so quick to jump. And that was what I saw with this whole thing, is they were so quick to jump to like, oh yeah, take that, big dude, big theater movie industry.
So you're saying during a time when we can't go to the theater, that's why we shouldn't go. That's why we should kill theaters.
Yeah, see, you get it, Dom. Yeah, no, it's like we said last week. We understand where the movie studio is coming from. Right? Mm-hmm. We get it. Obviously, in these times, even the idea of like, well, maybe we should, blah, blah, it's like, I get it, right? And we've seen with already other movies and studios not only pull movies, but push them back. Mm-hmm. They're like, well, we don't know when this is going to be released, or they'll say like, oh, well, we'll just do it further down the line and all this stuff, right? Whatever. But Universal did something. They went out of their way. They end up working for them. And now we're in a position where we see that this could work. But we don't know if it will work because, like we said last time, we're in a unique situation. And after this whole pandemic goes away and people start, are able to go out and go to the movies and stuff, if they do this again and they can reproduce similar, if not, good numbers, then yeah, maybe this is a bigger conversation we should have, right? Yeah. If now we realize that, hey, even though we do have this ability to go out and watch movies, people are still going to rather pay, X amount of money to stay in. That's the conversation we can have later. It honestly sounds so stupid when you put it out online like that, but you don't have the full story. And this is just a part of that full story, right? Where they're painting this picture like, yeah, but Universal put a lot of money into this movie and they had to release it online. And look, they only made like 100 million. And so like, I don't even know if they're going to do that well. But then when you look back at it and you say, yeah, okay, compare the first movie that made 140, looks bad. But also they're not paying that extra, or they're not getting fined, a 50%, deduction already because of this, right? That's all profit minus, the money they paid for like ads or whatever. It's all profit. But people aren't looking at it right now. They're just looking at it as like, well, movie industries, right? So, yeah, and money. So that's the only stupid part about this whole thing is that people are so quick to jump onto this idea like $100 million and online, so no movies, no movie theaters, right? That makes sense. But it's like there's a bigger picture there, and the sad thing is we're probably not going to see this all unfold right away because it has to take time.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to know anything until the quarantine's lifted and everything gets back to normal. And even then, we're going to have to wait because there's going to be people there that are going to be like, well, I don't know if I want to go to movie theaters right now. Like, I think I'm going to wait. You know what I mean? Like, just to be precautious. So, who knows when we can actually pull those numbers and say, this is a good guideline of like how much money a movie makes in a theater, how much the same movie makes online, what percentage of people order it online, you know what I mean? So it's a conversation to have. But when you jump to the conclusion of like, yeah, the movie studios really know what to do, and then you get another headline that's like, hey, they might be ripping off like their talent, it's like, who looks like a dumbass now?
Exactly.
부산으로 가는 KTX 406 열차가 곧 출발합니다.
저기요, 이상한 사람이 하나 타고 있는 것 같은데.
팀장님, 여기 11호차 응급 환자 발생했습니다.
아직까지 남의 안은 열려 있다니까. 우리 그냥 이것들 달고 부산으로 갑시다 바로. 진짜 몇 호칸? 당신들 봐봐. 지금 무슨 일이 벌어지고 있는지 몰라? 우리 열차는 더 이상 부산으로 운행할 수가 없게 됐습니다.
Train to Busan is a 2016 South Korean action horror film directed by Yeon Sang-ho. Fund manager Seok Woo is a cynical workaholic and divorced father of his daughter Soo-an, who wants to spend her birthday with her mother in Busan. Seok Woo sees a video of Soo-an attempting to sing Aloha Oi at her singing recital and succumbing to stage fright as a result of his absence. Overcome with guilt, he decides to indulge Soo-an's birthday. The next day, they board the KTX 101 at Seoul Station en route to Busan. Other passengers include Sang-hwa and his pregnant wife, Seung-kyung, COO Young-suk, a high school baseball team including Young-guk and his cheerleader girlfriend, Jin-hee, elderly sisters In-gil and Jong-gil, and a traumatized homeless stowaway hiding in the bathroom. As the train departs, an ill young woman runs into the train unnoticed. She turns into a zombie and attacks the train attendant. The infection spreads rapidly throughout the train. The group escapes to another car and locks the doors. Internet reports and phone calls make it known that an epidemic is spreading southward across the country. After the train stops at Daejeon Station, the surviving passengers find the city overrun by zombies and hastily retreat back to the train, splitting up into different train cars in the ensuing chaos. Seok Woo learns by phone that his company is indirectly involved in the disaster. The military establishes a quarantine zone near Busan, to which the conductor sets a course. Sik Woo, Sang Hwa, and Young Guk, who have become separated from their loved ones, fight their way to where Suan and Seung Kyung are hiding with In-gil and the homeless man. Once regrouped, they struggle through the zombie horde to the front train car, where the rest of the passengers are sheltered. At the prompting of Young Suk, the passengers prevent the survivors from entering, fearing that they are infected. Sang Hwa sacrifices himself to give the others time to force open the door and enter the car, but In-gil also does not make it. Young Suk and the passengers demand that the survivors isolate themselves in the front vestibule. However, Jong-gil, disgusted at the passengers and despairing for the loss of her sister, deliberately opens the other door and allows the zombies to enter and kill the rest of the car's passengers. Young Suk and a train attendant escape by hiding in the bathroom. A blocked train at East Daegu train station forces the survivors to stop and search for another train. Young Suk escapes after pushing the attendant into the zombies. Then later does the same with Jin Hee when they run into each other on the tracks. Heartbroken, Young Guk stays with Jin Hee until she turns and kills him. The train conductor starts a locomotive on another track, but is also thrown into the zombies while trying to save an injured Young Suk. The flaming locomotive derails and traps the remaining survivors, but Seok Woo finds a way out. The rest of the group is trapped again by falling debris. The homeless man sacrifices himself to buy time for Seok Woo to clear the debris and Suan and Seung Kyung to escape to the new locomotive. After fighting off zombies hanging onto the locomotive, they encounter Young Suk, who is on the verge of turning into a zombie and is begging for help. He was bitten when the conductor saved him. Seok Woo manages to throw him off, but is bitten. He puts Suan and Seung Kyung inside the engine room, teaches Seung Kyung how to operate the train, and says goodbye to his daughter before throwing himself off the locomotive. Due to another train blockage, Suan and Seung Kyung are forced to stop the train at a tunnel just prior to Busan. The two exit the train and continue following the tracks on foot through the tunnel. Snipers are stationed on the other side of the tunnel and are prepared to shoot at what they believe to be zombies, but they lower their weapons when they hear Suan singing Aloha Oi.
Train to Busan. A real life look at how this pandemic took place. So, just tell me what you think about the movie.
So I've heard about this movie before, and I wanted to watch it, but I just never watched it, and I always thought because I don't know about you, but for me, zombie movies kind of have been I've been kind of fatigued from the past decade of zombie movies. So it's another zombie movie, but it is Korean, so it's okay, so maybe it's a little bit different. So I never watched it until recently when we were gonna decide on what to do, and honestly, I am so glad I watched this movie because I think I can genuinely say this is probably maybe my favorite zombie movie now. It is so well done. From beginning to it caught my attention right away. I love that it introduces the zombie aspect with the deer. It gets you invested right away. You're oh holy shit, what the hell is that? And then I love that it gets the father daughter dynamic. You already know what's gonna happen, right? You already know that's how movies go. Oh, he's got to reconcile with his daughter, this and that, blah blah blah. And show that he actually loves her, right? But I like that they kind of speed through that a little bit. They get through it. It's 10, 15 minutes that they spend on that, and then bam, they're right on the they're right on the train. Because if this was an American movie, they would have spent all this time to and then to get to know the COO, and then we have to learn about the guy and his pregnant wife and what they did outside of. It's No. Cut all that out. We already know who the characters are when we get to the train. Like, we learn who they are through the way that they interact with each other. And then even like the zombie, like the virus, like the spread starts right away. And it's just, it keeps going. It's like nonstop action. Like, it has like the perfect like beats to it and everything. And it keeps you invested like through the whole thing. And like, even like at the end, I didn't expect the dad. I thought it was going to be like, oh yeah. And then they get there and like happy ending. Right. But then the dad got bit, and I was kind of surprised by that too, because it's like we're so used to Western like Hollywood style movies that when you get something from someone who's not built into that, like by that structure, who's not been taught by that structure so much, but yeah, like it's so good. Like, I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, watch it.
I think you hit it on the head with the whole it not being from America, so you're taking a look at it differently.
Yeah.
And we've said this in the past, but over the years, as you start to watch more and more foreign films, you realize that nothing is black and white. Nothing is A, B, and C. We talk about with your teacher, how she told you that's not how you do it.
Exactly.
It's like, but there is no way to exactly do it.
What was funny was that she showed a movie that actually didn't follow that structure, and she's like, and it was like, I think it was The Graduate, which everyone praises as this great movie, right? And she's like, well, that's an outlier. That's something different. And it's like, you just don't want to admit that your theory on how to write a script is wrong.
And that really does come through with this movie, because like you said, where we don't have to focus on what's going on with this and this, whatever, right? Because with a lot of, and I hate saying like all, American writers, but with a lot of like Western writing, and we see a lot with local people, when we talk about character development, we mean character development. But what people hear is, yeah, you explain what the person is, right? Like, you explain like, Todd, yeah, he had a hard life. So when he was 5, this thing happened, and that led to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, cool. So is this a character movie? No, Todd's just like the side character. And it's like, then why do we need to know about that?
Yeah. Instead of telling us, why don't you just show me him acting like that?
Yeah.
Like, he had a tough life.
And it's something I think like we even work on more so now than ever. How I remember like a long time ago when I forgot what we were doing, but I remember you were like, but why? And it's like, well, because there's something there, but it doesn't have to be said.
Yeah.
Like, you could have these, and you hear it all the time with like these prolific directors. Well, they'll say like, oh yeah, I know about this character, but I don't have to put it in there. Why would I have to? That has nothing to do with the story. It's just the character being that character is what you want to drive the story. And that's what you get in this movie. You get these characters that the only ones that you really know and you're invested in is the father and daughter. And that's it. Everyone else comes in separately, but they're all, everything you learn from there on out is based on their character, how they act, what they do. Do they help? Do they turn? Are they the ones that, are trying to force everyone into the other cabin? Or the ones that are trying to help? You know what I mean? And when you see something like this, that's supposed to be just a zombie horror movie, and you see them pulling things off that are like, God, this is like really well done. Mm-hmm. It makes you appreciate the movie more, because you're not getting this. I'm trying to think of like some zombie, any real zombie movie that's made in the past like 10 years.
Yeah.
And sure, some of those movies can be fun. I'm not saying that they're not. I'm pretty sure that, for instance, the one that I really liked, which honestly was a little bit different too, was The Girl with All the Gifts. Sure, that's like a kind of zombie movie, but they're not saying it's a zombie, but they're zombies. But that was also really well done too, because it's taking the idea of like what you think a zombie is, and then it pushes it, right? But The Girl with All the Gifts, the whole story is about whether or not these zombies or real zombies if they're people, and that's the story they tell. Here it's just about a father and daughter trying to survive. Spoiler alert, they don't. Well, the daughter does, but you know what I mean? Like, it's simple, but yet there's this mystique about it that makes it much more than some shitty zombie movie. Some what is that? Zomber. What was it? Zombie movies? The like beavers,
Zombievers,
something like that. Like dumb shit like that. It's not that. It's something way more. Something that it is just a zombie movie, but there's something far better produced that we're watching than this shit. And I don't know how to explain it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. This movie is just it's shot really well. The acting is really good. I think like just even the idea of putting it on a train too, like is like it is in itself too like innovative too, because it's like where can literally where can these people go, right? And I like the idea where they're like holding the door and like the zombies are just there, and he's like, I think you can stop holding the door. He's like, what? I was like, I don't think they know how to open the door.
I don't know what it is, but I do know that this movie is super entertaining. It's a great action movie. Honestly, this movie's really good. I've been telling you it's really good for a long time. I tell a lot of people too, like, hey, if you're really into like zombies or any of that shit, like this is probably one to watch. Plus, the bad guy in there, the dickhead.
I know.
Mao, something like that. But he's gonna be in Eternals, which is really cool. So if you guys are Marvel fans, you should probably watch this. Yeah, like straight up. So 2 thumbs up. Definitely go watch this. Yeah. I mean, you're in quarantine. You probably have Netflix. What else? What could you lose?
Yeah.
So check it out.
All right. So the segment for this week, well, let's talk about sci-fi as it's grown over this past decade.
Short for science fiction.
Ooh, yeah. In case anyone out there didn't know that, some guy's sitting there like, wait, he has to pause the episode. You're telling me that sci-fi stands for science fiction? Yeah, just because the way that it's changed and grown over these past decade is crazy. Because it's like, I think it went from more of like an obscure like genre. I mean, every now and then you'd have something pop up like an Alien, a Star Wars, but see, like those were like they're vastly different, and people kind of still like they're still like that. Alien still was like more of a horror movie, and I think this decade really the past decade going into now, it's grown to be more of like what sci-fi what original sci-fi like hardcore high sci-fi was before, where like people used to write short stories about, and then and I think as technology advanced and changed, when we look towards the future and what sci-fi could be, it changed from like the idealistic like 50s imagination where they're like, oh yeah, it's gonna be like the Jetsons, and now we look at it and we're like, oh, it's all almost horrible.
Well, yeah, because I think honestly, like sci-fi in its original form was almost like a highbrow type of ordeal. Yeah. Like these books and all this stuff that you would read.
That's why only nerds read it.
Yeah, like, they played with these crazy concepts that, that touched on sometimes real science, but most of the time just like, what if I could make this up? Yeah. And yeah, I feel like for the majority of the part, at least for like, movies and TV shows, it was more played out like cartoonish, if you will.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, like, yeah, there'd be something cool or something different. But I mean, for the majority, I think it's always been something of like, I mean, like you said, with the Jetsons, like, look how cartoonish that is. But honestly, looking back at it, it's like, it's also pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of how a lot of people saw, science fiction and stuff like that. But I think now that we're getting into this new era that is technically the future, like what people were writing back in the day as sci-fi of like what could be the future, what are these crazy concepts. Now we're in this age where those concepts people are actually studying, where they're really trying to figure this stuff out. Philip K. Dick isn't just some crazy guy writing anymore. It's like, maybe he was onto something. Yeah. Which that's a whole other story.
Yeah, that's something completely different.
But some of the concepts that he was writing about were so strange and so crazy that even some of the stuff that were produced were just kind of like, oh yeah, this is kind of like it's almost like a horror thing, right? And this is this, but now it's more of like, oh, this is like a realistic drama. Oh,
yeah.
Fuck. And yeah, honestly, I think that has to do with, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but us getting into the 2000s. I remember how big Y2K was?
Yeah.
And people couldn't believe that. What, 2000? That's like a different number. Yeah. Like we were so used to this one number, but now we gotta get used to this 2 number. That's insane.
Strange.
And yeah, I mean, look at how many times that we've seen of X movie, like, look at Back to the Future, like it's, what was it, 2015, like, oh, now we're in the future. And it's like, yeah, because people, that's what they really thought. They're like, oh yeah, 20 years everything is gonna be different. And it's like, maybe in 200 years it might be different, but even that's pushing it. We don't really know.
I mean, and what's crazy is that like some of these things do come true because the people who do innovate, they see these things and a lot of those people were nerds, right? So they sat there and watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, and they were like, "Oh, this is a really good movie." They saw like, hey, we can have video chats in the future? Wow. And then they decide to put that technology into something that's you can hold in your hand, and we take it for granted now. Which to if you went back in time and you told people like, see this device I have in my hand? That's all we do everything with this. And they look at you like, yeah, but what is it? It's like, oh, it's a cell phone. A cellular phone? Those big old boxy things that we have to carry the battery around for?
Yeah, and honestly, that's crazy to think about. Imagine if you went back to your oldest brother when he was 10 years old, and you were trying to explain to him 2020. Imagine how crazy you would sound.
Yeah, he probably beat me up. He probably could beat me up back then.
Probably, but that's not saying a lot. And yeah, I mean, we talked about it before too, where our generation specifically came into this new technology era.
Yeah.
Like at that turning point where, yeah, I mean, we had, video games and cell phones were a thing, but it was like things you only saw in the movie. And
yeah,
our video games are like, what was it? 32 bits was a lot, okay?
Remember the Nintendo 64? Because it had 64 bits.
Remember when it's on a disc?
What?
That's the future.
The PlayStation has discs?
The future. You mean Sega CD-ROM. But, but like we were in that era where things were really changing. And then almost like someone flicked the switch, it was completely changed.
Yep.
Like I said, like it's crazy to say, but like I still remember, and I'm talking about me being a young, adult, thinking like streaming movies,
yep,
like that's dumb. I didn't have a personal computer, I didn't have a cell phone.
Well,
none of like, you know what I mean? Like none of this shit was.
That's like when I always talk about like texting. I didn't understand what that was because like, wait, you can send something from your phone to like a message to another phone? Like, how does that even work? And then you think about it like that, like, right? So that's an obscure idea to like now take that idea and you create like this world based off of that, right? And that's sci-fi. Like all the things that we thought like, oh, that can't happen. That's got to be like in like 20 years, 30 years. It started rapidly happening.
Yeah, and I think that's what played a giant role in sci-fi taking a more serious turn, because now we realize like, hey, this isn't just some goofy shit anymore. This is stuff that we can actually deal with. I mean, they talk about all the time about people saying that if extraterrestrial life does exist, then most likely we're going to find it within the next like 15 to 20 years, they said. And like, and that's like a realistic projection.
Yeah.
Which is still fucking insane. And I mean, we just got, the White House to admit like, oh yeah, there's UFOs, even though they don't call them UFOs. What do they call them?
They call them unknown aerial. Like
Something.
something dumb where it's like, you mean an unidentified flying object? No, I mean,
you say that.
Yes, but no.
But yeah, I mean, some of this stuff is legit, like coming true, and not only that, but some of these ideas that seem so far fetched, now there's like legit scientists saying like, yeah, that actually might be real, or that could be, that could be like we talk about all the time with like, oh, what if, like multi universes and all this stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
And there's people out there. There's one guy and one girl, complete different scientists, who they had all this data that didn't make any sense. Then they like randomly came together and like, hey, our data together makes a lot of sense, and their data is saying like, hey, the reason why that our like the shape of our universe is one way is because like this could mean that there's another bubble universe that's close to us that's pulling on us.
Yeah,
and it's like crazy concepts like that, right? Well, which we're sitting here like trying to explain it, but imagine 30 years ago trying to explain that to someone.
Yeah, and like because I remember being a kid and hearing about like multi-universe theory, right? And string theory and all this stuff, right? And that back then were theories. And now it's more of like, it's more accepted in like mainstream where it's like, oh, of course there has to be like multiple things. Because the way quantum mechanics works is there has to be. In order for the fundamentals of like physics to work, like that has to be like the baseline for like, or it's like it's not just a theory anymore, it's more accepted. And it's like these concepts would be the basis for a movie like back then, and they'd be like some goofy movie about we have to travel to the fourth dimension in order to stop this from doing this or whatever, right?
But I think that's what really led into what we consider now like these prime like sci-fi movies where you're right, back in the day it would have been like funny, but now it's like really thought-provoking and it gets you like emotionally invested and it pushes your buttons more than you would think. And I think that's why, at least for me, I always try to tell people like just give it a shot, because it's not what you think it like. With horror movies, we talk about all the time is horror movies could go either way, right?
Yeah.
And really any movie could go either way, but with horror movies, most people think they're gonna get Jason Goes to Hell's or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Those old slasher films and gore movies. That's what people think when they think of horror movies. But we talked about many times how horror movies are evolving now, where now they're making things that weren't considered horror, one point, now an actual thing. And the same thing with sci-fi is that I think a lot of people think of like, oh, that's just silly, like, oh, space and aliens and blah, blah, blah. But now it's touching on these real life subjects of like, oh yeah, we might be living in a simulation. And then scientists are like, yeah, that's a really good possibility. And then you get these movies playing with that, or these TV shows playing with that concept, and you're like, huh. And I think that's why, at least we feel that this like new era of science fiction is a little bit underrated, really. I know some films get praised or whatever, but honestly, like there's so much going on now, not only like in the real world, but in these like fantasies that we create, that things don't seem so far-fetched anymore. But it doesn't make it any less fun. It makes it actually more intriguing. And I don't know, I think that for a long time we've kind of looked into this as like, yeah, it's just sci-fi. But now that we're getting these amazing TV shows, these amazing movies, that people are pushing the boundaries of this stuff, like, to me, it's crazy when you see something like a Black Mirror and it's so entertaining, and then you see these headlines and it's like, that's exactly like Black Mirror.
Yeah.
Fuck, we're living in Black Mirror,
Yep.
just like the creator said. So,
exactly.
I don't know. I just think that sci-fi still has a stigma of being lesser than, right? But
Yes.
really, I feel like people should look at it more eyes wide open, because it offers so much more than you would get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I just think that sci-fi, what we have now, is something special.
Yeah, it's getting close to like, I think it's got sci-fi and horror. They get lumped together a lot. I think because they scare people, either on purpose or just the idea of what it means. So they kind of lump them together. And I like that horror's been elevated now to a point where like people don't think of it as like schlocky, like, oh, that like horror's evolved over the past few years to the point where people now respect it a little bit. I think that's the same thing with sci-fi, as it's pulled it along, and like sci-fi has been able to showcase like, hey guys, you know this idea that we think of like AI? What if instead of it just rebelling against us like in Terminator, what if it just wants to be free like in Ex Machina, where it just wants to get out, right? It's not this idea that like it needs to take over. It wants to be free, just like you.
Yeah. It's
Like,
not necessarily
malevolent.
Yeah.
But it has the same wants like you want. It's just instead of being born, it was born through someone creating it. Which is like, yeah, like where like see that, and it begs that question of like, well, where's the line between being human and being an AI, right?
It's just I think sci-fi is really special right
Yeah.
now. I think sci-fi has always been special.
Mhm.
Like I said, it's always had a special place in my heart because my dad was super into it, and watching all those stupid ass B movies from back in the day. Like, I enjoyed it for what it was, but growing into like what it is now, I don't know, it just makes me feel a different way. And sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's silly, sure, but you know, now like look at Devs, like Devs isn't funny. It's kind of really fucked up.
Yeah.
But watching it's like I could not stop watching it. So I don't know. I think that for people who have a stigma of what sci-fi is and how it should be perceived, you know, all we're asking is just wipe that away and give it a shot. You know, you may not like it. It still may be too far-fetched for you out there, but who knows? Like, maybe something can hit where you're like, hey, I can actually follow this now. This makes sense to me. This feels realistic to me. And it's like, yeah, because it's starting to be realistic. But with that, guys, we'll just say thank you for listening, as
Yes.
always.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
100%.
And if you would like to support us, please follow us on any of your streaming services. And don't forget to check us out on YouTube. We'll have a link in the show description.
Mhm.
Or you can follow us on our socials. That's INTB_podcast at Instagram and Twitter. Or you can email us directly at intbpodcast@gmail.com. And let us know, do you like sci-fi at all?
Do you hate sci-fi? Or did you see Train to Busan? Are you waiting for the sequel, like companion thing that they're doing, or did you hate it? Do you hate zombie movies, or what do you think of Westworld? I really want to know what people thought of it.
Yeah.
Because did they hate it? I bet they hated it.
Probably. But yeah, just let us know. Whatever. Email us, DM us, tag us, whatever. We're down for it all.
Just let us know.
Until then, guys, as always, remember.
It's just not that bad.
It's not that bad.